Hello and welcome to episode number 205. This is the Project Management Podcast at pm-podcast.com, and I am Cornelius Fichtner. Nice to have you with us. When project budgets are dwindling, deadlines passing and tempers flaring, then the usual response is to browbeat the project team and point fingers of blame, usually towards us, the project managers. That's not really all that helpful. For these situations, what is needed is an objective process for accurately assessing what is wrong and a clear plan of action for fixing the problem. Enter Todd Williams, PMP, who wrote the book Rescue the Problem Project, a complete guide to identifying, preventing, and recovering from project failure. Todd and I sat down at the PMI Global Congress last year, and in this interview, we discuss the approaches to project rescue. This episode is sponsored by the PDU Podcast, which is our sister podcast. It's a convenient way for you to earn unlimited PDUs. Get project management webinars delivered to your portable player, iPod, Android phone, BlackBerry, whatever you have, and earn at least one PDU every month. With the PDU Podcast, there's no need to go to a classroom. You don't even have to sit at your computer. Instead, enjoy the freedom of downloading them to your portable device and earning your PDUs anywhere. Your PDU Podcast puts you on autopilot for your recertification. Visit pducast.com, that's pducast.com. Here's a brief overview of Todd's book. Rescue the Problem Project provides project managers, executives, and customers with the answers they require. Turnaround specialist Todd Williams has worked with dozens of companies in multiple industries, resuscitating failing projects. In his new book, he reveals an in-depth start-to-finish process. As always, when we have an author discussing his book here on the program, we are giving away 2 copies, and by now you should all know how that works. 1 copy is reserved for our premium paying subscribers, and 1 for everyone else. If you are among the everyone else, if you're listening to the podcast for free, and you would like a chance of winning a copy of the book, then please go to facebook.com/pmpodcast, that's our Facebook fan page, and look for the book giveaway announcement. All you have to do is leave a comment. And now a little bit about Todd, and then we'll get going with the interview. For 25 years, executives of manufacturing and service companies have asked Todd Williams to help them build leading-edge systems, improving organizational efficiency and turn around troubled projects. From this experience, he has developed methods to streamline organizations, recover red projects, and help prevent recurring failures. Todd draws his experience from working on internal and third-party projects, including integration of manufacturing systems, equipment integration, web-based collaboration tools, thick clients with automated internet update, and large-scale business system integration. And now, please make a legal U-turn. Enjoy the interview.
The Project Management Podcasts feature interview.
Today with Todd Williams, President of eCameron Incorporated, author and speaker on Project Turnaround.
We are still coming to you live, so to speak, here from the PMI Global Congress, North America. We are at the Gaylord Texan Hotel near the, what was it again? The Grapevine Ballroom. And people are walking past us here going to the various presentations that they'll be attending this afternoon. And with me here at the table is Todd Williams. Hello, Todd.
Good afternoon, Cornelius. How are you?
Very well. Thank you very much. I'm enjoying myself here at
It's fun.
Congress. Yes, it's always fantastic. You kind of get lost because there's so many people here. I know a ton of people, yet it's difficult to find them among, it's like finding a needle in a haystack.
When you're in a facility that has 1,000 rooms and then
Yes.
a convention center and then everything else, yes.
3,500, 4,000 people. It's difficult to find your 10 friends.
Yes.
Yeah, exactly. we have you here today to talk about your book called Rescue the Problem Project. I have a copy right here. The subtitle says A Complete Guide to Identifying, Preventing and Recovering from Project Failure. It is published by AMACOM, the American Management Association. So let me begin with a question totally, related, unrelated to the book. Why did you write it?
I've been doing this type of work for about 25 years, and it sounded like something that was needed, so I sat down and wrote it. It helped out a little bit that I had just fallen off the top of a ladder and broke my back, and I didn't have anything else to do. So I was sitting in a chair, and I said, now I've been dealt a bunch of lemons. It's time to make some lemonade.
Wow. Okay, so that's kind of a project that you had to rescue there yourself.
Yeah, I had to rescue myself in that one.
All right.
Yes.
So what is the biggest mistake that people make when they are trying to save a project?
Trying to save the project.
Oh, trying to.
That's the problem. They
you have
don't
to save it. Not there is no. What is it? There is no try. There is only do. Right.
There's only
like
do.
Yoda. Yes.
And the problem is they get into it. Ego, emotion, whatever gets them to this point where they're trying to actually fix things, but they don't have the objectivity. They don't have the ability to look at the cultural differences and what's gone on in the group to actually do that work. And once they back away and realize I'm powerless over this thing, I need some help because it got here under my supervision and tutelage, then they're able to actually get someone in to help do that. Now, it can be someone from some other area of the company, but usually they're trying to fix the project with the people that are on the project already. And they're already beat up. They're already in too much trouble.
All right. Let's also take a step back at this point, because we're talking about problem project. We're talking about troubled projects without even identifying or defining what that means. So when is a project in trouble? How do you measure that?
There's generally people look at what there is from a standpoint of the triple constraints: scope, schedule, and budget. And companies will come back and say, if I am 10% out of variance on one of those, it's yellow. Maybe they'll say 15, then it becomes red. And if two of those attributes become red, then the project's red. The only problem is I can deliver a project to scope, schedule, and budget, and it can still be a complete failure. The customer doesn't like it. So the real thing you have to measure is value, and whether you're providing value in that project. So too many times we get stuck on these things that are measurable and forget to back off and take a look at whether something that is more intangible is actually in peril. And once those other things start to go into peril, then I have a serious yellow project or red project. So I've got the failure. So the real trick is, when is it in trouble, right? They don't know. And so you have to look at the customer, you have to look at the supplier, say, what are we trying to do? Now, you can have a project that's a complete success for a customer. I love the system, this is great. But the supplier is 10% over budget, maybe lost a bunch of money. That project was not successful.
Okay, so it's not just one or two or three criteria. It's more than that, right? It's more a holistic view of the project.
Beauty's in the eye of the beholder.
Yes.
Right? And so the value is in the eye of the person who's doing it. So to have a successful project, so instead of defining failure, let's define success. A successful project is that both the supplier and the customer get delivered something of value. So the supplier, it may just be money, it may be reputation, it may be that they did something great. The customer has functionality, decreased costs, something in return for the money, and they say it was a fair deal. And that's what really defines what a successful project is. And when people walk away with that, yes, we had everything was great, then you have a successful project. If you don't do that, then you have varying degrees of ugliness until you get to something called failure.
You mentioned reputation.
Yes.
This morning, just before lunch, I attended the presentation by John DePiante. He is one of the project managers on the IBM Watson project. Mm-hmm. And they talked a lot about the fact that the two companies that were involved in this, Sony Pictures who do Jeopardy, and IBM, who managed the Watson project, that computer that was a contestant on Jeopardy, that both companies were very afraid of reputation, loss of reputation.
Yes.
So let's talk a little bit about reputation in regards to project failure, because it has so many dimensions, right?
Yes, it does.
First of all, we have a failed project. Well, that's bad for the project manager who has managed the project so far. It's very bad for the team. It also means your company has some kind of a reputation issue, possibly, if it's a big international, a project that is out there and there are many people outside of your company who know about it. And of course, it's also for the people coming in, possibly, to saving this project. Reputation is a big issue. How do we deal with reputation and troubled projects?
That's a very good question, because it's handled very poorly in general. So if you think about it from my standpoint, I'm sitting here waiting to help someone fix a failed project, and they're going to have to call me, right? So the first thing that has to happen is they've got to admit there's a failure, admit there's a problem, and get over the hurdle of actually calling somebody to help. And that, even though it may not be an outward reputation type of situation, that person internally starts to feel like, oh man, I've really screwed up if I got to call him. So it starts
Is
there.
that your reputation? That if people call you, they feel, oh my God, I have screwed up, I have to call Todd.
That is the initial reaction.
Yeah.
And my reaction to that, my comeback to that is, wait a minute. Let's get through this. This is not you who caused the problem. It is not one person. It's an entire system that was actually involved in that. And it was something or set of things, not just one thing, a set of things in that system that caused this failure. We can't do everything. So don't feel bad about having a project that's in trouble. I try to stay away from the word failure. You have a project that's in trouble. That happens all the time. The fact that you're actually able to call somebody to bring them in, that's a really exciting point. That's that realization point where you can go forward. So the reputation, yes, you've got a company that may have a reputation that's at stake, and many times we've made recommendations to cancel a project, and we've been told, no, we can't. We're going to just have to lose more money. One very large project I was on, had we canceled it at the point in which I said to cancel it, we would have lost about $1 million. As we ran the project out, my projections were going to be that they would lose between $2 and $3 million. And so my recommendation was, financially, for the stockholders, we should cancel this thing. And everybody came back to me and said, we can't do that. We'll lose our reputation. So what we need you to do is to try to bring this in, and if you could do it at all possible, keep it under a $200 million or $2 million loss. Excuse me. $2 million. $200 million. I kept it under that too.
$200 million.
No, it was $2 million.
$2 million. Okay. Big difference.
Sorry about
there.
that.
Big difference there.
Yeah. It felt like $200 million.
What about the reputation of the previous team, the previous project manager, project team, everybody who was on the project?
Unfortunately, even though I don't think I've ever been on a project where the current project manager was at fault, maybe there's one where the current project manager was at fault, the project manager normally takes a severe hit for that. They were the one who was over it, even though they may have been talking about all the problems to senior management was ignoring them. They're usually gone. They usually get escorted off to someplace else. Okay, unfortunately, and there's been some very, very good project managers that happened to, and it's frustrating to me because it's a perfectly good person. The people on the team itself, now that's a little bit different. So when you rescue a project, what you're really doing is you're shutting down the old project and you're starting up a new project. And you have to look at that team and figure out who on that project needs to go from the old project to this new project. And that is a decision on what their skill sets are, what their attitude is, whether they're team players, because you have to have a team, and that goes above skill set. So you do that matrix and try to figure out what goes on. The sad part is so many times there's people on a project that don't have the skill set to do things, but they're not on the project for their own choice. They're on the project because someone's assigned them to the project. And you're going to go to this project, you're going to go to this project. And so you have this extremely innocent person who is put in this job to do something, and they're working their their bum off trying to get things moving, but they just don't have the skills to do it. And so you have to replace them. And sometimes that can be bad, because sometimes when you replace someone on a project, they actually get replaced in their full-time job too. And so you do any of those changes very quickly. Whenever I'm on some of the biggest projects, I think they've taken maybe 3 days to do that, just because of the logistics of multinational projects and how we could do things when and where we were at and all that. So taking at the most 3 days and then just stop it at that point. Nobody else leaves the project. There are no other changes that from a management level that we put in. There's people who leave through attrition of their own choice because they're always stressful. And then the key is building that team back up together, right? And once you start building that team up, then you build a kind of a gang-like mentality so that they're feeding on each other's positive. The reputation sticks with them, unfortunately, all the way to the end. And they always say that these people have been working on a failed project. So, it does. It's everywhere and throughout there. And you have to be very cognizant of it. And you have to continue to work to try to break down all that negative, because negative will kill you.
Just to be absolutely clear, so you don't say the project team should be completely replaced.
Absolutely
You're
not.
saying keep the people who are the right people. Get rid of the wrong people.
Correct.
To put it into a very short statement.
And occasionally there's people who go, like the project manager, where they're right or the wrong people. They go because they were just the scapegoat that ended up having to go, right? And like I said, it's very unfortunate. But yes, keep the right people and make those decisions quickly. Make that change very decisive, very immediate, very pinpoint. It happens on this day, preferably on this day, one day. And then bring in some new people to take the place if you need to. And in many cases, you can restructure the project to make that rehire very, very small. So you could get rid of 10 people, maybe only bring in 2.
I have a project that is definitely failing. I'm hiring you as my consultant. You're coming in. What's the first thing that you will do when we sit down?
Well, it depends on who you are. Okay, so too many times I get project managers coming to me and saying, hey, I got this problem with this project. Please come in and help me fix it. And the first thing I tell them is, your project's running just fine unless your executives say that the project isn't running good. And so you get this, I asked this question quite a few times, is how many of you have been on a project where it's been failing and in trouble and management won't listen to you? And I usually get a lot of people saying, oh yeah, I've been on tons of those. Well, the answer is that was not a project that was in trouble. If management doesn't think it's in trouble, it's not in trouble. They have some other bigger fires that they're working on. Your job is still press forward, trying to keep everything under control as much as you can, because you haven't hit their pain point yet. And you don't want to hit their pain point, because then it's just going to make life miserable for you. And you really don't get the help that you're desiring. You're going to get other things that are going to make things a little bit worse for you. So in general, if you're at that level, I want to basically tell you, keep doing what you're doing and cheer you on and be some sort of mentor for you, totally on the side. If you're an executive that comes to me, you've actually crossed the biggest hurdle that has to be crossed, because you have now realized that you have a problem and you picked up the phone, you're talking, and now, okay, what is the problem? So whenever I go in and talk to an executive about what's going on in the project, I really want to make sure that the project is what the problem is. And that's too many times the project's blamed for something that is really organizational. And I want to make that distinction very quickly.
How do you determine if a project can be rescued, or whether it's better to actually stop the project and move into a totally different direction?
That's highly subjective. Sometimes, and I think I already mentioned a little bit earlier, that I had a project that was, $1 million. We would lose $1 million if we walked away now, but if we finish the project, we're going to be $2 to $3 million in the drink. So sometimes you can actually look at it and say, here's what the financials look like. What I can't mention on that is the risk that was involved because of the team structure, where the project was being run, and all the other factors that go into a project that can cause it to go south. So I normally start by going through and interviewing absolutely everybody in the project to make sure that I understand who and what is going on, and pull that data to get. Then I present the customer, my customer, with an assessment of, okay, the project is sitting here financially, and it's sitting somewhere else with the cultural end of things and all the people problems that go on. So if I dive down into that people problems, then I can start saying, so here's the risk that I see that you're going to have as you go forward. So then I'll make a call at my level and say, here's my recommendation that you should continue the project, you should scale the project way back, that you should retarget the project, you should stop the project and start it as something new, or just cancel the project altogether.
Is it more gut feeling, or is it actually criteria and measurements on a sliding scale?
Well, there's the financial component is on a sliding scale. Here are the numbers, and this is what it's going to end up being. The rest of it is a significant amount of gut feel.
Right, and experience, obviously. That's what gut feel boils down to.
Gut feel boils down to experience and how the people get along. You cannot take a project that's been in trouble, stop it, restart it with the same team or even a slightly different team if you don't think you can actually make it a team. Right? We use the word team too much, but if we can't get those people bonded together, and if I don't think that can happen, then I'm going to be high on the list of incinerating the project and figuring out something else to do with the resources. And when I say resources, because you're talking about both money and people, and let's go reallocate those and use these things appropriately.
All right, perfect. To close out, very simple yet very difficult question for you. Let's help our listeners out a little bit here. What 3 things can our listeners do today on their projects to prevent failure, to look ahead and make sure that, they're not going to go into the red?
The very first one sounds kind of rude. I wrote a blog by this name, actually. It's just shut up and listen.
Well, they're doing that already, so...
Too many times. Well, yeah, they're doing that for this program. There's no question about it. But we tend not to do that when we're sitting around and listening to people on our team. And we tend to hear maybe 2 of their sentences and not the next 3, and we start making decisions very, very quick based on a small amount of information. So listening to your actual team and making sure that things are working properly in your team, that is truly number 1. And if you're not listening, you're not going to get anywhere. The second one would be objectivity. Being an honest broker, objective, listening to what's being said, and keep the emotion out. Don't let ego get in the way. Oh, I really want to get this project done. I really would like to have it blue. I really want to have, this neat little feature in here. You've got to be extremely objective. When you do that, you gain the trust of your management inside whatever portion of this you're in, either the supplier side or the customer side. But then you also win the respect of the other side. So if you're a supplier and you're being extremely objective and you're pointing fingers at yourself openly and honestly in an open forum, and you're pointing the fingers at them for things that they need to do, then all of a sudden you get this feeling of confidence and people start realizing you're being open and honest with them, and problems start to get fixed instead of looking at people to point fingers at. Right? So here's a problem. Here's what needs to be done. I need you, customer, to do this. We need to do this. Does everybody agree? Oh, okay. Well, everyone's got an equal share of the load. Let's move forward. That objectivity gains a lot of trust from a lot of people. The other is we tend to, if I can make up a word, over-processify things.
Good word.
You like that?
Yeah.
I'm trying to get into the OED. I'm
Registered trademark.
Yes. Yes. We tend to use process too much, and we try to rely back on that and get back to a checklist. We got to remember that projects are run by people. So you really have to first anchor the people and make sure you have the right people doing the right thing at the right time. Then apply the correct amount of process that'll actually keep that moving forward. And then when you're all done with that, then you can start looking at technology and see what technology can do for you. If you're in the IT world, it's almost like I just said something of blasphemy there, but technology is definitely last. It's not up first, and too many times we try to apply technology to something when we should be applying just that good old sit down across the table and talk to someone.
Wonderful. Thank you for these recommendations. Once again, the book is called Rescue the Problem Project, a complete guide to identifying, preventing, and recovering from project failure, written by Todd C. Williams and published by AMACOM, the American Management Association. Todd, thank you very much for your time today.
Thank you, Cornelius. Take care.
And that was my interview with Todd Williams on rescuing troubled projects. Please remember, if you would like a chance to win a copy of this book, then please go to facebook.com/pmpodcast and look for the book giveaway announcement. Of course, you can also become a paying subscriber of this podcast, and then you're automatically entered into each and every one of our book giveaways. That's it for today. Thank you very much for listening. As always, you can find us on the web at pm-podcast.com. If you are a project manager and you want to become a PMP certified, then the easiest way to do so is with our sister podcast, the Project Management Prepcast, and study for the exam by watching over 38 hours of video training from pmprepcast.com. Please send your emails, as always, to info@pm-podcast.com. And when you write, also as always, please tell me where in the world you are writing from. And finally, we have this. Youth is wasted on junior project managers. Until next time.